Hello, and welcome to the podcast. This is Get in the Driver's Seat. We're telling stories about leadership moments in small to mid-sized professional practices. I'm your host, Sandra Beckor, Practice Management Coach at Beckor Management. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Carleen Dehaney, the founder and principal of FXO Consulting. Her firm focuses on financial management and growth strategy for service-based businesses and nonprofits. Carleen serves as entrepreneur in residence at York University's Y Space Accelerator program, which is where we met a few years ago. She's an active contributor to the VP Advisory Committee of the Black Female Accountants Network. Carleen has also served on the boards of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants of Canada and the Toronto Kiwanis Boys and Girls Clubs. Fun fact, it's not all about numbers. Carleen has also a creative side, and she recently published a sweet and lovely illustrated children's book, Toothbrush Animal Hunt, in my hand here for those on YouTube. Welcome, Carleen.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And as you can see, I'm dressed for the occasion.
Yes.
For those of you on audio platforms, my jersey says, all caps, the Financial Slayer. And yep. I won this at Jackie Porter's client event. Hi, Jackie. So I figured it would be a playful way for us to open up what can be a stressful topic for some.
I love it.
To you, Carleen, I know you have an opening statement for professional reasons. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So just as part of this podcast today, just to let you know that this conversation is intended for educational purposes only. Obviously, we're telling lots of stories, sharing our experience, and it's not to be considered legal, tax, or accounting advice.
Perfect. So, Carleen, you have shared with me that you hear professionals tell themselves and believe, I'm just not good at numbers. So for those who are listening who relate to this, how can they start to unravel this storyline? Have you seen it in action where someone used to believe this and then they stopped believing it? What does that look like?
Absolutely. I've seen that both in my corporate career and since being an entrepreneur. And I talk about it being a bit of a mindset shift. And it's not necessarily the focus on, I think people think about going back to school and doing math and calculations and algebra, and that fills them with dread. It's really thinking about, what's the goal? What do you want to know from these numbers? I think that really then helps you drive doing the deep dive into the numbers and understanding what happened, why it happened, what are the insights that you got from it. It's really a good way of thinking about especially as a leader, when you're thinking about running your own firm, you have to be the leader of your own business. So it's really insightful to have those numbers to be able to make decisions about the future for your business, to know what's going right, what's going wrong. It's really, really helpful. So I say almost shift your mindset from thinking about, I need to know the exact calculations and ratios. Focus then on what are the outcomes. Once I have this information, what will it help me do? I think that really helps individuals change their perception about, financial management, financial strategy, from being a very stressful thinking about the granular detail to it can really benefit me and help me make really great decisions about the business.
Mm-hmm. So turning it into a motivator and changing the idea of it being about being good at numbers, because actually it doesn't even matter if you're good at math or not good at math. You're just figuring out a way that will work for you to run your business.
Exactly. And, there's lots of professionals that can help. So it's really good to, and, what I always recommend to have a good basic understanding. Once you have a basic understanding, then you know what's going on, and then you can get other people on board with you to help you, to guide you, to give you, advice. Because then, you can ask better questions because you'll have a good basic understanding. And then you can really make your relationship with any professional that you work with really effective because you understand the basics, and then you can elevate from there.
So what are the basics?
So I talk them about kind of two building blocks, and kind of how I structure my firm. It's the financial management side of things, and then the financial strategy. Almost like the foundation of a house. You've got to have the foundation before you put the structure. You can't do the strategy without the financial management. And that's taking it back to basics. I think about it in whether you're a one person sole proprietor and you like lots of receipts and paperwork to a multi-billion-dollar organization. It's all about what happened, when did it happen, why did it happen, what are the details. So you have to make sure that all your documentation, your details, you've got all of that filed, sorted, and organized. If you don't have that, that's the fundamentals to anything. You can't create financial statements without the transactions. What happened? Why did it happen? How much was it for? So just making sure that you have all of those in place, whether you're very big or very small, that's really key. Even if you want to do your bookkeeping yourself, for example, you need to have all this documentation. Or if you want someone to help you, you need to have your documentation in order for someone to help you. Otherwise, it can get very expensive. You need someone to do like a deep dive into finding all your paperwork and the trail of what happened in your business. So having that in place then enables you to do reporting. What happened? Why did it happen? What period are we comparing? Again, like we're talking about deep dives, am I more profitable on this type of client, or am I profitable, in this area of revenue, for example? Then you're able to do deep dives into the numbers and find out what happened, what are the insights that you're getting from the information. From there, once you've got the basics in place, and obviously compliance is a part of that, making sure you're paying, taxes, sales taxes, any other related filings, etc. So that's the basics. So once you've got that in place and you've got a good handle on getting that done, then you're going to move on to the strategy. So from that information, then you can start doing scenario planning. You can start thinking about if I do this, what will the impact be on the business? Because you've got the fundamentals in place, you can start playing about with the numbers a bit more to think about decisions that you want to make. And I talk about making it from an informed place. Because you've got the numbers in place, you can think, okay, if I do this, this is the potential impact. It will help with, I think, confidence as well. There's not less of the finger in the air, let's hope for the best strategy.
That finger in the air, that really sounds scary.
For me, I would definitely not recommend this approach. But it's that learning. I think, particularly for people who come from like professional services, we're really good at what we do, and you focus on that. But becoming an entrepreneur and owning your own business is more than just being really good at what you do. Now you've got to take on whether it's like marketing, IT, human resources, financial management, and you may need support in those areas just to strengthen your kind of knowledge and expertise, so at least you can handle it. And like I said, then get somebody on board to help you, but you understand what's going on.
So, for some of my clients, and I see this across professional sectors, lawyers, architects, engineers, like, across the board, where sometimes the owner isn't the problem. The problem is actually in the next level. It's the partners, associates, the managers who may not have that comfort with the numbers. They tell themselves, I'm just not good at numbers. And maybe they never used to have that responsibility. So, at their more junior level development, they really were just focused on the technical aspect of their job. And they got good at that. And then they get promoted. And at that new level, they're expected to have some financial responsibilities. And they're like, but I'm not good at numbers. So how does the owner support people with their development in changing that story? So it's not the owner changing the story, it's the managers.
That's a really good one. I think if you think about a business where at some point you're kind of sharing what's going on. So if you have maybe targets, and as part of that reporting, you could then see, are you performing well against that target? It gives a different parameter. So you're not just calculating for the sake of calculating. You're trying to hit a target, and there may be incentives for meeting those targets, whether they're promotional wise, whether they're financial wise. I think it's a bit of a culture change,
Yes.
and taking your organization, some of your team members on that journey with you. So it's not just give me that number and then I'll take it away and make decisions with it. Let's get you part of the decision-making process. And obviously, there's going to be different levels depending on your seniority, but getting them involved in some decision making. So if you get this certain result, what does that mean for how you're working? Is your team being efficient? Could you be more efficient in some ways? Could you beat that target somehow? Almost like a bit of a competition internally. I think that helps with educating individuals with really understanding. We talk about, especially at the senior level, it's the story. It's not just the numbers. It's about, what does it tell you and why? The calculations obviously have to be correct, but what's it telling you? And then from there you can make decisions. And then you can compare previous periods. You can see how you've performed. So I think it's a bit of a cultural and educational change, and taking different team members at their particular levels along with you on the journey.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice. It's an empowering way to approach it.
Exactly.
Okay, so for some professionals, they already have these resources in place, so they've moved on from the finger in the air that you described earlier. That made my heart jump. So they have the accountant, the financial advisor, maybe even a consultant, but they still feel like a fish out of water when it comes to their finances. So draw a picture for us. What should responsible financial management look like for that small to mid-sized professional service firm?
Well, absolutely. And I think, something I admitted to recently is I definitely think in kind of frameworks, almost like an Excel spreadsheet. So for me, it's, I talk about having that dream team. So just making sure that you have all the professionals in place, even if you don't need to utilize them from day one. So I would say, reach out to a lawyer. You may not need them right now. You may not need them for any kind of documentation. But if you've got that relationship, if something were to happen, you've already built a relationship with someone that you could reach out to. It's not a brand new relationship that you have to try and nurture in the moment of panic or something that needs to be resolved. Thinking about your, maybe insurances, bookkeeper, public accountant, getting all the kind of professionals in place, even if you don't need them. And as part of kind of engaging with them and deciding to work with them, I would say interview them. Ask them, for my business, what are the compliance pieces that I need to get on top of? What do I need to be thinking about? Are there certain dates, cadences, or things that I need to be looking at on a regular basis? And I suggested in the past as well, creating almost an annual calendar. So you'll have January to December, as you kind of have those conversations with the professionals that you're kind of engaging with, plugging in the months, when your responsibilities are. So I think that really helps visually. Then you can look at the calendar of the year and say, okay, in June, we've got sales tax, I've got corporation filing, for example, and I also need to maybe file an annual return for my corporation. So visually being able to see when all your responsibilities are, because you may have some months where you've got a lot of filing and payments and deadlines to meet, and other months where not much is happening. I feel like with that framework, it really helps with giving people a sense of comfort that, okay, I've got almost like a checklist. I've got my calendar. Okay, in January, have I submitted this? Check. Have I filed that yet? So you can almost check off the year using that. So it's a really simple way of just creating, a framework, a checklist by interviewing all your professionals. And I would say something to think about when you're working with a professional is, are they explaining things in the way that you need them to be explained? And every professional is different. People work in different ways. Every client is different. But just finding out, are they the right fit for you? Do you come away and you understand what's been said in a way that you need to understand it? Or it's so high level that you still don't understand the concepts that you're discussing in the meetings with that professional? And I think that's a key piece. And I always ask, I've mentioned this before, as a business owner, ultimately you are responsible for everything in your business, the filings, compliance, the payments, and we utilize professionals to support us in getting those done. But don't walk away if you don't understand. Ask again and ask again until you do understand, because that's part of your responsibility to make sure you understand. with any professional you're working with, and don't feel embarrassed. Like, we can explain it in different ways. We maybe give you different examples, but just feel comfortable that, you know, you can really get an explanation that you can take away and go, okay, I understand what I need to do here and what my responsibilities are.
So, Carleen, can you remember any stories about somebody who started with having some of these relationships in place, but maybe didn't have the confidence or know where to get started with knowing what to ask for? So they felt like they were still a bit lost, even though they had this support in place. How did it look? Like, what kinds of questions did they learn how to ask? How did they start? How did they end?
Absolutely. The thing is, I almost want to take this back to kind of my experience. So even though it's
Yeah.
not financial, because that's my area of expertise, I would say on the marketing side, I don't have a background in marketing. I don't really understand the expertise. And starting a new business, obviously you realize that marketing is really important. So you kind of want to just, I don't know, if it's like throw spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. You want to try a bit of everything. But what I found is, until I really understand the fundamentals, it was difficult to know what was going to work and what wasn't. So it was, again, like almost that piece of interviewing, you know, whether it's doing research online, whether it's, you know, doing reading, reaching out to other professionals in that area of expertise, and really, interviewing them with the questions about, you know, what would I need? This is my type of business, etc. And I think the ultimate question is, when you engage with others, is there something that I'm not asking that, you know, you would expect someone of my type of business to be asking? Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, because that's not your area of expertise. And I think sometimes adding that as the final question, because you might have lots of questions, but you didn't maybe address like a key area because you have, you know, no idea that it's really important. Asking that at the end of kind of that interview is there anything that you feel like I should have asked that I didn't ask? And almost leveraging those professionals to help give you more a rounded perspective of things that you were probably unaware of. And I found once I did that from a marketing perspective, it definitely helped me open up kind of thinking about, oh, I never thought about that. I never thought about, like, for me, from a marketing perspective, being a business owner, I'm front and center. And that's not necessarily, when you think about big, you know, large organizations, you probably don't know who the CEO or president is because they're not front and center. But, you know, evolving and scaling as a small business, you effectively are your business. And that's something I suppose I was almost blind to, you know, growing as a business, until I spoke to people who were really strong in marketing, and that was an area of expertise. And I think for me, once I was given that insight, then it changed how I approach things. So I think definitely, you know, interviewing experts and then coming back and saying, is there anything I should have asked that I didn't ask? And always collecting those answers.
And so for somebody who already has those relationships in place, but they do the bare minimum, let's put it that way, right? And you're looking to step up your game. So you don't necessarily want to get rid of the team that you have. You like them and you feel like there's more potential, but you don't know how to take it up a notch. How do you approach it the same way? Just start interviewing your existing team all over again and putting your new needs on the table in those discussions? Or is there specific things that they should be asking for?
That's a really interesting perspective. I've definitely seen where almost a miscommunication between the client and the professional services, where the professional services could offer more robust or more advanced services, but they almost didn't realize that the client actually wanted that. So everybody just kind of keeps going on their lanes, providing the same services, accepting the same services. So I think that would be a great approach. If that's somebody you feel like, I would like to grow with the professional service provider, like saying, is this something that you offer? Because they probably, you know, are offering it, but you've never asked them that they, you know, they've never assumed that that's something you would want. But then, you know, as businesses grow and evolve, and it's no good or bad, you may, you know, outgrow the service provider that you're with. So definitely a key area I find with, as people grow in their business, is they're reaching out to their network and saying, you know, I know you're at the same level as me. Who are you using? How have you found that experience? Because then, it always helps with, moving to a provider that potentially would already understand how you work and the industry that you're in, for example. So I say using the two approaches, depending on whether you feel like you've maybe outgrown your service provider. If not, then digging deeper and see if they can provide more support in the areas that you're looking. And if you feel like you've outgrown them or it's not a service that they provide, reaching out to your network and saying, hey, who do you use? Would you recommend them? And leveraging that kind of relationship. I think that's really key, and kind of just thinking about, okay, is this the right professional provider for me?
Yeah, it's very interesting how your angle is focused on your need as opposed to knowing what to ask for, because it's such an easier entry point. So if we're
Yeah.
talking about these, right, these professionals who they don't even know where to start or how to take it up a notch, really just they don't need to be good at numbers. All they need to do is understand what their business needs and start there, because their financial advisors, their accountants, their consultants, coaches, they're good at numbers.
Yes.
So just start with your needs. I need, and what are some examples of needs? What would that be? I need to talk about my need for what with my accountant.
Absolutely. So you could think about, okay, we're thinking about taking on some new clients. So we're thinking about our need for new team members. In which order should we do it? Do we have enough resources in-house to take on new team members before the clients arrive, and vice versa? Do we need to think about additional funding for the organization? So it's all those decisions that need to be made, that you will need from the numbers, but you're thinking about an operational outcome.
Yeah, I get those questions actually. That's a really common one. Which comes first? It's the chicken or the egg, right? Can I hire now because I know I'm growing, or should I wait until we're over capacity and we can't handle it anymore, and then we know we have the money, so we go hire then.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I talk about like scenario planning as well. I think that's really helpful, because once you've got your fundamentals, you can start playing with the numbers. So, if we were to bring in X amount of more revenue next month, does that then mean we could hire 2 months later? You can think about all the timings and the amounts. Like, does that mean one junior, one senior, two seniors? You can plug all those numbers in and really play about, when does that happen? What are the trigger points to which we make these decisions? Do we need to grow by 10% more revenue before we can even think about bringing a new team member on? And what does that do to cash flow? Are there other expenses that come along with a team member, not just maybe compensation? You're thinking about office platforms, subscriptions, etc. So it's really, I think, scenario planning is underrated. It definitely gives you the opportunity to see the impact of things before you've signed the contract or made the payment.
Another common scenario that comes up is this idea of promoting people. So giving, considering, as you're saying, the scenario planning, what are the different options for creating that package at partner level or at associate level, where somebody feels like they have the stake in the firm, they will likely stay longer, right? And it's less pressure in terms of cash flow, or maybe it's more of that carrot, dangling the carrot. Do you ever do those kinds of scenarios?
So I don't personally do that, but I have seen it in practice. I think there's definitely the area of, there's a couple of stakeholders that are involved, whether it's your human resources, your lawyer, your accountant, all looking at the impact of, any potential options that you're thinking about putting on the table. So what does that look like for the value of the business? What does that look like immediately from a human resources point of view? Are they then a part owner of the business, or they have kind of non decision-making abilities, but they're there kind of financially. So leveraging those stakeholders, I think that's what's really key. I think when I talk about that dream team, reaching out. So I'm thinking about making this, and it's not just like I'm going to purchase some more paper, like a fundamental business decision. Reaching out to your dream team and saying, is there anything that these are things I've thought about, is there anything that I haven't considered as part of that conversation? And then it may involve all parties getting together, but reaching out to that team Again, you might not need your lawyer every day, but if you're thinking about maybe changing the business structure, reaching out and saying, is there anything that I haven't considered that I need to be thinking about as part of this decision making? Because then that will give you a bigger kind of oversight on, okay, what's the impact of doing this, legal, financial, cultural, business implications of that. So that's why I really kind of recommend kind of getting that team in place, even when you don't need them. So when you're thinking about those kind of decisions, you can really leverage their expertise, which is really key, because something like that, promoting somebody from being more of a team resource, whether it's employee or independent contractor, to a fundamental part of the business is a really critical decision, and you need to get lots of advice on that.
And sometimes that advice is pretty specialized. So at certain milestones, you will need different kinds of advice.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting idea to get the dream team in place and make yourself more nimble when you approach those milestones.
exactly.
And also, it's interesting because when you have those early conversations, you're not the only one asking questions. The professionals will ask you questions, and then you didn't realize that you should start thinking about something.
Exactly. Like we said, they'll like make you think about other areas. Oh, I didn't think about that. Or what does that do to something else? Oh, okay. So now you're maybe doing a bit more of a deep dive and coming back to them with kind of insights and information. And then that just really helps you structure things, because you do have to think about the future. So they help you structure things for the long term, not just the short term.
Mhm. Okay, so sometimes the obstacle to getting more competent at at the managing of your financials can feel like a real obstacle. Like it's, there's no motivation to overcoming this. And I think what we're talking about is really helpful, because it helps to highlight how the goal is really important. And that can make somebody more motivated to find a way around their own obstacle if the obstacle is about, I don't feel competent, or I'm disinterested, I'm averse, or I don't have time. And can you talk a little bit about how, so let's help our listeners understand the importance of this goal. How does helping them to get better at financial management make them better decision makers, manage their risk better, basically run their firms better? All the way from the granular level of, I'm writing a proposal, I'm sending invoices, I'm managing scope of work. I'll do all of those things better when I have a better grasp on my financials, all the way up to scaling up my firm. So that's on the much bigger change level.
No, absolutely. I think it's thinking about, say, a professional service firm that's growing, where you're almost successfully unprofitable. So you're very busy, you're getting a lot of work in, it's amazing, things are going really, really well, but it doesn't seem to be translating to the bottom line. So understanding why is that happening? Because you've got lots of client work happening, you've got a great team in place. It's taking it back to that detail, the financial management piece of things first. So, are you profitable on all your clients? Are there certain types of work that you're maybe not profitable on? Or there may be certain areas of your revenue that you're very profitable on, because it's very easy for you to do, and you've standardized the process. Then looking at your overheads, are you cost efficient? Are there things that you're not using that maybe, and the typical example is subscriptions. There's lots of platforms, lots of shiny objects that are going to solve everything for you. You sign up, and then 6 months later we're not using that, but there's still a reoccurring fee maybe sitting on a company credit card. So the financial piece is definitely taking you back to, it's the compliance, so making sure that you're on top of all your finances, because that's really important as a business owner. And then getting you to the point where you're getting the numbers. So whether that's you, whether that's a bookkeeper, whether that's somebody in-house that you train, having that done then gives you and as up to date as possible. Because you can't make decisions on numbers that are 6 months old. Things that might have fundamentally changed in that time. And then I talk about building on that with a strategy. So that's where I find, I've had clients say to me, I really look forward to our sessions because that's now we've got the financial management piece all sorted and working well. We can start looking at the strategy and making decisions and thinking about the growth, thinking about changing things. So to go to your example, when you think about, okay, doing a proposal or a scope, you're really thinking about when you put that number out there, do you already know, as long as you keep to the parameters and the scope of maybe timelines and deliverables that you communicated to your team, will we be profitable on that project, on that engagement that we sent the scope out on? And looking at that, things change. Team members maybe become more expensive because maybe you have a specialized individual in your team. Overhead costs, obviously inflation, things have gone up. Do you need to revisit that maybe every 6 months, once a year? Now that I plug in all our current costs, are we still profitable on this type of work based on my proposal model? And you need the financial management to make sure your numbers are up to date to be able to plug that in to see, okay, are we profitable here? Do we need to look at and not necessarily increasing the price? Do we need to look at becoming a bit more lean and nimble? Do we have maybe too many people working touching this file where it's not actually moving anything along on the deliverable or the work to the client? So then you can deep dive and really have a look at what's going on, and then plugging that in, making sure that from your proposal and your scope and your fees, that's trickling down to cover the cost of the team members that are working on it, any overheads that you have, and you're achieving your profitability goals. So whether that's looking at benchmarking you against other firms in your same industry, or looking at the consulting or professional services industry as a whole, then it just gives you markers. Are we falling behind? Are we doing really well? Am I comparing it to previous year? Then you can, like I said, start making decisions. Do we need to think about doing different types of work? Do we need to be offering different types of services? And it's a really deep dive. You can really get into it. Like I really enjoy looking at clients and thinking about, okay, do we have too much reliance on maybe one client? When we look at the percentage of all the client work, we actually really work with one client more than anything. What's the risk on that? If that client were to move on, for example, or are we more reliant on one particular area of service delivery, but actually we don't really enjoy that area of service delivery and it's not that profitable? So then, like I said, you can make all those decisions. But it's really going back to getting the fundamentals done, getting your reporting up to date. So then you can have, as I say, do the fun stuff and start making those decisions and looking at the impact of things. And I find once you've got the fundamentals in place with your management, clients really do actually enjoy the strategy side because they can then leverage those numbers to make informed decisions. Do I do it now? Do I do it later? How much is this going to cost me? Are there any cash flow or funding requirements that are needed in next month, next year? Then you can kind of make those decisions. You feel confident going in, and I talk about being you're able to respond to a situation. Oh, this client didn't pay. Oh, well, we kind of anticipated that, so I know that I can cover that expense. You'll feel a bit more comfortable rather than this client didn't pay, we expected them to pay, now I have to pay something else. And I didn't have almost a plan B in place because I hadn't even thought about it before the situation. So I think it definitely empowers clients to be more confident because things will happen. You can't navigate for everything and have everything sorted and no one ever pays late or there's never anything that happens unexpected. That's always going to happen. But being as prepared as you can, I think then when you get into the situation, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. You've already kind of thought about it. If this happens, I'm already prepared for whatever the contingency is or the strategy is. There's less overwhelm and a bit less kind of panic in the circumstances. You can kind of plan ahead and you can see the landscape. If this continues this way, this is the impact, whether positive or negative, and then think about what you want to do with that.
It's so funny listening to you describe this, Carleen. It reminds me why I named this podcast Get in the Driver's Seat. That's exactly the reason. Because
very much.
Right? A lot of professionals who struggle with these concepts, they don't see themselves as in the driver's seat. They see themselves in the passenger seat, and the bus is on wild road, right? And they don't have a way of navigating. They don't have a way of seeing ahead and front, ahead of that curve that's coming up. The way you're describing, and I think that what you're talking about gives them a way of understanding. Here's how you can move from that passenger seat into the driver's seat so that you can be in charge again. Even if you're the owner, if you're running a department, whatever it is, there's something that you're in charge of. And here's a way to do that so that you feel confident about making decisions, about maybe making changes that you wanted to make, but you hesitated to make. And I think that there's a motivation that comes out of it in seeing that you're actually going where you wanted to go.
Yeah, that's absolutely, summarizes it so well. I think it is that kind of driver's seat view on the situation as opposed to the passenger seat. And then when you're in the driver's seat, you can make decisions. So it's, anticipating what might come ahead based on experience, based on, advice from others, and then preparing for that. So, in the eventuality that something happens, you're not as kind of, reactive to the situation. And you will feel more confident. And it may never happen. Like you might have a mitigation strategy if this happens, but it doesn't happen, and then you'll feel more confident in kind of being in charge.
I love how you said that one of your clients says she looks forward to her meetings with you. Because, I have this, I don't know, I expect that a lot of them are nervous about their meetings, with their financial consultants. And for her to look forward to it, that's interesting. Why does she say that?
I think it just definitely goes back to that being able to make those decisions. You're in a place where the fundamentals are being taken care of, whether it's outsourced or in-house, and now you get to play with the numbers. You get to see, okay, how did we do compared to last month? What does the trend say that we're happening? You get to see the story, and you get to almost be the writer of that story. So what do we want to do? Do we want to continue down this path? Do we need to course correct? So we're looking at kind of the outcomes and the insights, rather than, and you can get the professional to we can crunch all the numbers and do ratios and calculations, which then give us, additional insight. But we're looking at the strategy. What does that mean for the business? What's the long-term impact? What's the impact on sustainability of the business? Can I make investments in different areas? That's the fun piece of it. So we're coming everywhere and just seeing. So we said we're going to do this, and what was the? Let's look at what the result was of the thing that we thought about doing. And I think it's almost like a bit of almost like a present of kind of, okay, so we did this. Can we see the impact and can we see the benefit of that yet? And we haven't seen it yet. Okay, maybe it'll be next month. Okay, it didn't work the way we planned. What's plan B? Can we course correct? It's definitely fun to kind of then start to implement the strategies for the business and what you envision it to be. Do you want it to be, small and tight, but lean and sustainable? Or do you want to scale it and increase revenues and team members and, have an office, etc.? You can use, the strategy then to build the business that you want. And, we've talked about, and I mentioned this in a conversation recently, that growth means different things to different people. So it can be, you want to grow sustainably. You want to be aware revenues are, manageable. It brings in the compensation that you need, covers all your expenses, and that's your definition of growth. And for other people, it's, a very big, large organization that continues to grow. Maybe there's an exit strategy. You hope to sell it to somebody else, or you just want to continue to grow. So it's defining what the, I suppose, what your outcome is. What's the growth that you're looking for, and then working towards it, and then using the strategy to help you build and grow the company that you're looking for.
You know what? I've used this phrase, build the professional practice you want. I've used that in my marketing. It's funny that you said that exact phrase.
Very true.
It's so important because that way you realize that you can make choices. You don't have to just go along for the ride, and you don't have to see every day as kind of survival or doing what you feel has worked before and just keep doing it, even though it's not exactly what you want to be doing. Here's where you get to decide, what do I actually want? And it doesn't have to look like what my peers are doing. It can look completely different and be profitable and be successful and be sustainable. You choose. And then this is a practical way of making it roll out. What you're describing, Carleen. It's so empowering. It's wonderful.
And that's what I love to see. I really like to see the growth, with my clients, and providing them with the resources, tools, and education that they can take on to, beyond working with me. They can apply it to their personal lives, whether they're thinking about planning or budgeting for themselves. I think it really empowers people to have that level of knowledge, and then knowing who they can leverage to help build some of the fundamental pieces. So, maybe bookkeeping is not for everybody. I'll leverage a bookkeeper. I've now got them in place. I get the reporting when I need it, and now I can use those numbers to start making those decisions.
And that's a good segue to my next question. So these are all great ideas, but do you ever run into people who are like, listen, I am so busy. I can barely find the time to sit down with my family for dinner. I don't want one more responsibility, even if it's a financial responsible thing. Do you run into people like that? And how do you help them to understand how to bring this into their job in a way that actually is feasible and manageable?
That's really interesting. I would say when clients come to work with me, they've maybe had a bit of an aha moment. And what I see as a critical change in that mindset piece is going from kind of being almost the driving analogy, like, being in the passenger seat. So financials just kind of happen. I just make sure that I pay my taxes and everything's filed. Moving from that perspective to thinking about, how do I lead my business? Even if it's a one-person business, how do I lead that business? And I think it's always difficult, especially as a professional. Our comfort zone is our area of expertise. We probably do that in our sleep. We can do it on the weekends. We obviously do it because it's something we enjoy and we're good at. But being a leader takes a different area of competence. So even taking it back to me, like, I do enjoy creative side of things, and I love doing that as an outlet. I couldn't imagine doing it as a career, that not necessarily my strength. But as a leader, I had to get a handle on that. And once I got a handle on it, then I could have people help me make it even better. Because when they're asking me particular questions, I have an understanding of it. If I don't have a full understanding, can you explain that to me? What's the benefit of that? So it definitely changes your perspective. I think it's thinking about it more than just the compliance and the financial management. It's going to benefit you like way beyond the numbers. So, even thinking about operationally, does it mean then if you can get a good handle on the numbers and how profitable and how sustainable your business is, can you then get somebody in so then you don't have to work as many hours, for example, and still be profitable? Could you maybe utilize platforms and systems and processes that kind of then takes away time that you don't no longer have to do? So it enables you to kind of get out of the day-to-day grind, even if you don't want to have a big team or lots of service providers. Even think about your own, like a one person firm. How do you want to work operationally, and how can you get the numbers to get you to that place? So it's so, obviously I really enjoy numbers, but it's more than the numbers. It's the story. It's the story and just the insights it will give you to be able to make those decisions. So this is how I'd like to work. How does that work? Can I create more profit in this area so that I can use that profit to be able to apply to maybe getting an assistant or getting someone junior in to help me? So then I maybe work fewer hours a week, for example. And then you're thinking about lifestyle and the way that you work and the way you want to run your business. Well, you're thinking about that, but that's all been driven by looking at the numbers and making those informed decisions. So it's always a bit of a circle. I'd say that going back to what are your goals, what kind of business do you want to have, and what's your why? Like why are you doing this? Some people want to be very profitable and maybe become public one day, and some just want to have a really good lifestyle, do what they want to do. But especially as a one-person professional services, you can work really, really hard. But and potentially like leaving maybe from the corporate environment to become an entrepreneur, that was one of your drivers. You wanted a better lifestyle, but you've then ended up, and I've seen this like on social media and things, people are still working really, really hard, maybe even like much harder than they were in the corporate world, many years after starting up the business. So it's definitely that, and I don't use the word again, driver, to really help you make those decisions. It's the story and the driver for that, and the insights. Not necessarily focusing, the numbers help you do that, but not focusing on, oh, now I've got to do some reporting, and now we've got to do some calculations, and this Excel spreadsheet or this program seems really complicated. And leverage your professionals, whether it's a bookkeeper, whether it's an accountant, they can help you, like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is where I want the business to go. Can you help me, whether give me key performance indicators or insights into the analysis? Are we getting there, and how can we get there? And then your focus is on, are we getting there yet? Using those numbers without actually having to sit down and do all the calculations.
Right, because this is also a mindset question.
Yeah.
So if you tell yourself, I'm too busy to take on these financial responsibilities, and by the way, it's not just the small firms. I've seen this all across the board with different firms at different levels of management, where individuals will get into this mindset of, I'm too busy, I can't take on this financial responsibility. And they're believing that story that they tell themselves without understanding that actually this is a way out. And if they get a handle on the financial management, not even having to do the numbers piece themselves, just working with the resources that they have, it's actually the way out of those problems that they're facing. As you rightly said, Carleen, because they will be able to identify ways to have more support or to stop doing things that aren't profitable, cut costs, or whatever it else, focus on the areas they're most interested in. It does come from following the money,
Yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely.
that actually can be their way to a better work-life balance, not away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I even suggest that to individuals that I mentor as well. Like sometimes we can be so busy being busy, we can't make those decisions. So every so often, just stop and take reflection on, okay, what's the priority? If the priority is creating a bit more work-life balance, the priority is getting some more money into the business. If you're just continuing to be busy, you won't be able to make those decisions. So just stopping and reflecting, and having those, like you said, the numbers then help you make those decisions. It's not just about producing numbers and reports for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever use the 80/20 rule to help pinpoint some of this? It's one of my favorite go-to tools.
Interesting. That's not a tool I've been using recently. I've been using I believe it's the Eisenhower matrix. I think it's the Eisenhower matrix. So it's the do, decide,
Yes.
delegate, and drop. When you look at importance and urgency, I find that it's a really, really helpful tool because we'll all have very long to-do lists. Especially as an entrepreneur, there's a lot to do. But you really do have to focus on when in the quadrant that has kind of urgency and importance. Often those are the things that are driving the business forward. And you can almost use that tool for your financials as well. But what's urgent and important when you look at the insights that you need to address is profitability dropping? Or profitability is fine, but cash flow is dropping. Then you need to then delve into something. Have you looked at maybe our receivables? Are we not getting paid on time? Is there an issue with the processing of payments, for example? That will then help you pinpoint on those key areas, rather than something small, maybe a $10 transaction that, like, okay, you're having a look at, but is that critical that you look at that today?
That's a fascinating practical approach to prioritizing with financials. With the 80/20 rule, what I was referring to is sometimes people don't realize it, but they're spending all that time, the busy work, they're
Yeah,
spending all of that time on the 80% of their client files that are not profitable or that they don't enjoy. And that actually shrinking back their business to the 20% that drives the 80% of the profit will maybe make them happier.
yeah, exactly. That's a really good way of thinking about it. And like I said, looking at the numbers will then tell you that, like whether there's clients, whether it's type of work, and that's often the case. There's always especially in service-based businesses, there's always particular areas of revenue or clients that maybe drive the profitability, and really understanding like what is that, why is it, are there other clients that you could offer those services to, because the more you're able to reinvest in the business, then that then again it helps with the sustainability and the kind of longevity of the business.
Okay, Carleen, do you have anything you want to say about the future of how professionals will manage their financials, maybe using AI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely there's an area of, especially there's lots of programs now and platforms that utilize AI to, whether it's accounts payable, so that's the supplier invoices side of things for your financials. And even a bit of, on the invoicing side as well, there's a lot of platforms for that. So that makes some of those transactional tasks more kind of efficient. So I think there's definitely going to be a move towards now looking at the insights piece. Whether it's using a professional, whether it's utilizing a piece of software, the transactional piece will get easier. And I think then, especially when I talked about kind of that fundamental building block, making sure that you have, all the transactions in place, the paperwork, the audit trail, as you would call it. With all these tools, there's really going to be no excuse to be able to keep on top of all the transactions. Well, the value is going to come is then leveraging, that data, whether it's AI generated or manually, then saying, okay, what does this mean? And, as, obviously as AI grows, there's definitely going to be more data in there. So whether it's, based on our, and, spitting out from, a piece of AI software based on experience of service-based businesses in this area for the last 3 years, profitability is X%, then you can then use that even more to help you make those decisions. So if I look at my numbers and then when I get the insights back from the piece of AI, are we on par? Are we better? Are we worse? Why are we worse? So then that will give you, I think, even more leverage and more insights to dig deeper into the numbers. So I think AI will definitely give us more of a leverage to get that information more effectively and quickly as well. So hopefully we'll make decisions a lot quicker.
Okay, so with AI, less excuses and faster to the fun part, the decision making.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Carleen, for your time and your insights.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. I've had lots of fun.
Me too. And to our listeners, if you are interested in learning more about Carleen Dehaney, please go to fxoconsulting.com. You've been listening to Get in the Driver's Seat, stories about leadership moments in small to mid-sized professional practices. I'm your host, Sandra Beckor, Practice Management Coach at Beckor Management. Take care, everybody.
Right.